wind howled like a wounded beast, tearing through the trees as Ethan Carter tightened his grip on the barn door. Rain lashed against his face, cold and relentless as he fought to secure the last of his animals before the storm swallowed the farm whole. Thunder rolled in the distance, a warning growl from the blackened sky. He'd lived through enough storms to know when one felt different, when the air itself seemed charged with something more than lightning. Then came the sound. Not thunder, not wind. A deafening crash that shook the ground beneath his boots. Ethan spun toward the field, squinting through the downpour. A plume of smoke rose in the distance, twisting like a dark serpent against the storm. His heart hammered. No one should be out there, not in this weather, not ever. But as the rain eased for a breath, he saw it, the jagged silhouette of wreckage half buried in the mud. A plane here. His legs moved before his mind could protest, boots sinking into the sodden earth as he ran. Then movement. A figure staggered from the wreckage, clutching their side. A man in a flight suit, helmet gone, blood streaking his face. Ethan's breath caught. The stranger swayed, then collapsed face first into the mud. For a heartbeat, Ethan hesitated. Trouble had a way of finding those who invited it in. But as lightning split the sky, illuminating the pilot's pale, gasping face, he knew he couldn't walk away. He hauled the man up, slinging an arm over his shoulders. The pilot groaned, his words slurred but urgent. "They'll come for me." Ethan didn't ask who. The weight in his arms, the dread in the man's voice, it was enough. As the storm raged behind them, Ethan dragged the stranger toward the dim glow of his farmhouse porch, unaware that the real storm was only just beginning. The farmhouse door slammed shut behind them, muffling the storm's fury as Ethan lowered the pilot onto the worn couch. Firelight flickered across the man's ashen face, revealing a deep gash above his brow. Blood soaked through his flight suit, staining the fabric a sinister black. Ethan moved quickly, boiling water, tearing clean rags, ignoring the way his hands trembled. The stranger's eyes fluttered open, sharp with pain but alert. "Don't call anyone," he rasped, gripping Ethan's wrist with surprising strength. Ethan frowned but nodded, pressing a damp cloth to the wound. "You're in no shape to give orders, son," the pilot hissed as the fabric made contact, then forced a tight smile. "Daniel, Captain Daniel Reyes," a military name, Ethan noted, the kind that carried weight. But before he could ask questions, headlights sliced through the curtains. A car door thudded outside. Sheriff Liam O'Connor's voice boomed through the rain before his knuckles hit the door. "Ethan, you decent?" Daniel's body tensed. Ethan met his gaze, saw the silent plea there. Without a word, he tossed a blanket over Daniel's flight suit just as the sheriff barged in, dripping wet and scowling. "Power's out half the county. You seen?" Liam's eyes locked onto the stranger. "Who's this?" Ethan's lie came smooth as old whiskey. "Cousin from out west. Car broke down on Route 9. Liam's boot tapped the mud-caked flight boot peeking from under the blanket. "That's so?" The silence stretched. Daniel coughed and Ethan prayed it sounded civilian. Finally, Liam shrugged. "Well, tell your cousin the roads are washed out. Ain't nobody going nowhere tonight." He tipped his hat, but the suspicion in his eyes lingered as he stepped back into the storm. The door clicked shut. Daniel exhaled hard. "You're a terrible liar." Ethan tossed him a dry shirt. "And you're a terrible guest. Now talk. Why's a captain got a sheriff sniffing around?" Daniel peeled off his suit, revealing a torso mottled with bruises. "Because I wasn't supposed to crash here." His fingers brushed a hidden pocket, checking for something, then stilled. Panic flashed across his face. "It's gone." Ethan didn't ask what it was. The knock at the window answered for him, 3 sharp raps, not the sheriff, not the wind. Daniel lunged for the fireplace poker as shadows moved on the porch. "They found me." Outside, a voice called through the rain, polite as a reaper. "Mr. Carter, we'd like a word about your new friend." Ethan snatched the poker from Daniel's grip and motioned for silence. The firelight cast jagged shadows as he crept to the window, peeling back the curtain just enough to see. 2 men in black suits stood on his porch, their faces obscured by the brims of their hats. Water dripped from their coats, but their shoes, polished to a mirror shine, hadn't a speck of mud. City men, dangerous men. The taller one knocked again, harder this time. "We know he's in there." Daniel's breath came fast behind him. Ethan turned, catching the way the pilot's fingers trembled as he clutched his side. Not just from pain, fear. "Who the hell are they?" Ethan whispered. Daniel shook his head. "Doesn't matter. If they get inside, we're both dead." The words hung between them, too heavy to dismiss. Outside, one of the men pulled something from his coat, a glint of metal, not a gun, a radio. Ethan's mind raced. His old hunting rifle was upstairs, but he'd be outnumbered before he could load it. Then his eyes fell on Daniel's discarded flight suit. The jacket lay crumpled near the fire, its lining torn. Something gleamed in the fabric, a flash of gold thread. He grabbed it, fingers finding the hidden seam. Daniel lunged too late. Don't. The insignia came free in Ethan's palm, not the eagle of a captain, a single silver star polished to a lethal shine. Brigadier General, the title tasted foreign on his tongue. Daniel No General Reyes closed his eyes like a man awaiting execution. Outside, the radio crackled to life. A voice, tinny but clear, "Move in." Boots thudded on the porch steps. Ethan acted on instinct. He yanked Daniel to the cellar door, the old hinges screaming as he shoved him down into the darkness. "Stay there. Don't make a sound." He slammed the door just as the front one burst open. The suits filled the doorway, rainwater pooling at their feet. The taller one smiled, all teeth. "Evening, farmer. We'll make this quick." His partner stepped forward, gloved hand resting on his hip. "Where's the pilot?" Ethan forced a laugh, blocking the cellar door with his body. "Ain't no pilot here, just me and my cousin like I told the sheriff." The man's smile didn't waver. "Funny, because our radar says different." He pulled a photo from his pocket, Daniel in full dress uniform, medals gleaming. "This man is a traitor. Harboring him makes you one too." Ethan's pulse roared in his ears. Traitor. The star in his pocket burned like a coal, then a creak from below, the cellar. The men's heads snapped toward the sound. The shorter one drew his gun. "Guess we'll check anyway." The moment the gun cleared its holster, Ethan swung the fireplace poker with all his strength. It connected with the man's wrist in a sickening crack, sending the weapon skittering across the hardwood floor. The suited man howled, clutching his arm, but his partner moved like lightning, a knife flashing from his sleeve. Ethan barely dodged, feeling the blade graze his shirt as he stumbled backward into the kitchen table. Dishes crashed to the floor as the second man advanced, his polished shoes crunching over broken porcelain. From the cellar door came a thud. Daniel wasn't staying put. The knife wielder's eyes flickered toward the sound, and Ethan seized his chance. He hurled the poker like a spear, catching the man square in the chest. Not enough to stop him, but enough to buy seconds. Ethan dove for the fallen gun just as the cellar door burst open. Daniel emerged, pale but steady, clutching Ethan's old hunting rifle. The standoff froze the room. Two trained operatives against a farmer and a wounded general. The taller suit wiped blood from his mouth and smiled. "You really think you can win this, Reyes? They'll burn this farm to the ground with you in it." Daniel's finger tightened on the trigger. "Maybe, but you won't live to see it." A shotgun blast shattered the tension. Sheriff Liam stood in the doorway, smoke curling from his 12-gauge. "Everyone freeze." His eyes darted between the suited men and Daniel's rifle. "What in God's name?" The injured suit lunged for his radio. Liam fired again, blowing the device to pieces. "I said freeze." In the ringing silence, Daniel lowered his weapon. "Sheriff O'Connor, thank Christ." But Liam's barrel didn't waver. "I don't know what circus rolled into town tonight, but I'm shutting it down." He jabbed the gun at Daniel. "You, trailer park by the highway. Two fugitives matching your description robbed a gas station an hour ago." His eyes narrowed. "Except you're no thief, are you?" The suits exchanged glances. The knife wielder spoke first. "This is a national security matter, Sheriff. Stand down." Liam spat on the floor. "Last I checked, my jurisdiction didn't end because some spooks say so." He nodded to Ethan. "These boys harassing you?" Before Ethan could answer, headlights flooded the room. Three black SUVs skidded to a stop in the yard, doors flying open. Daniel grabbed Ethan's arm. "They called backup. We need to move now." Liam cursed, racking another shell. "Cellar. There's a storm tunnel leads to the creek." As the first boots hit the porch, Liam turned his shotgun on the suits. "You gentlemen are under arrest." The lead operative laughed. "For what? Existing." Liam's grin was feral. "Trespassing, assault, and pissing me off." The cellar door slammed behind Ethan and Daniel as the first gunshots rang out above. The tunnel smelled of damp earth and fear. Daniel's breathing came in ragged gasps as they ran. "Your sheriff just signed his death warrant." Ethan didn't look back. "Liam's tougher than he looks." Above them, the farmhouse exploded in a symphony of shattering glass and shouting men. Somewhere in the chaos, a single shotgun blast echoed, then silence. Ethan prayed it wasn't Liam's last stand as they plunged deeper into the dark. The storm tunnel emptied them out at Miller's Creek, the icy water clawing at their knees as they stumbled onto the opposite bank. Behind them, orange light bloomed against the night. Ethan's farmhouse was burning. He stood frozen, watching 20 years of memories turn to smoke until Daniel dragged him behind a fallen oak. "Keep moving. They'll fan out with thermal scopes." The general's voice had regained its command, though his face was gray with pain. They made it halfway up the ridge when the first helicopter thundered overhead, its searchlight cutting through the rain like a white-hot scythe. Ethan pressed flat against the mud as the beam swept past, close enough to feel the rotor wash. Then, a sound that didn't belong. Not the whine of turbines, but the deep-throated roar of heavy engines. Tanks. Daniel grabbed Ethan's collar, hauling him behind a boulder just as the forest exploded with movement. Soldiers in full combat gear poured from the tree line, rifles raised. But these weren't the suit's men. Their patches showed the screaming eagle of the 101st Airborne. A voice boomed through a megaphone. "General Reyes, stand down and identify." Daniel stepped into the open, hands raised. "Authorization code Sierra Victor 900. Tell General Hargrove his son's alive." The effect was instantaneous. Rifles lowered. The lead soldier barked orders into his radio. Within seconds, a convoy of Humvees crested the ridge, their .50 cals trained on the burning farm below. The rear door of the command vehicle flew open, and out stepped a man who made the night itself seem to stiffen. General William Hargrove, his dress uniform pristine despite the mud, his eyes locked onto Daniel with terrifying intensity. "You look like hell, Falcon." The old man's voice could have chipped stone. Daniel swayed on his feet. "Had to crash your prototype somewhere scenic, sir." Hargrove's gaze shifted to Ethan. "And you must be the farmer who started a war." Before Ethan could process that, the general snapped his fingers. Medics swarmed Daniel, loading him onto a stretcher as Hargrove continued. "That stealth jet was carrying next-gen counterintel software. The men who shot you down work for a private military conglomerate called Blackthorn. They've been trying to sell it to China for 6 months." Ethan stared at the burning wreck of his home, and they thought I was part of it. Hargrove's smile was all teeth. "No, Mr. Carter, they thought you were expendable." He turned as a new sound split the night, the shriek of jets. 2 F-35s streaked overhead, their afterburners painting the clouds orange. "Those boys are delivering a message to Blackthorn's headquarters as we speak." The radio crackled. A voice announced, "Sheriff's secure, sir. Took 3 rounds, but he'll live." Ethan's knees nearly buckled with relief. Hargrove clapped him on the shoulder like they were old friends. "Come on, let's get you debriefed." As they loaded into the Humvee, Ethan saw the suits being marched out in zip ties. The taller one spat blood at Daniel's stretcher. "You're dead, Reyes, they'll just send." A rifle butt to the stomach silenced him. Hargrove didn't even glance back. "Put that trash on ice. I want names." The vehicle rumbled to life. Through the window, Ethan watched his farm shrink in the distance, the barn where he'd proposed to his wife, the porch where she'd rocked their stillborn son. All ashes now. Daniel, half conscious on the stretcher beside him, gripped his wrist. "We'll rebuild it, every board." Hargrove handed Ethan a flask. "Drink, you've earned it." The whiskey burned like redemption. Outside, the first streaks of dawn kissed the horizon, painting the smoke gold. Somewhere beneath that fire, Ethan realized he'd buried a lonely old man and woken something new, something dangerous. The general's radio crackled again. "Sir, POTUS is on secure line 1, says it's urgent." Hargrove sighed. "Tell him his future Secretary of Defense needs another hour." He winked at Ethan as the Humvee accelerated toward the dawn. "We've got a farmer to promote." The Pentagon's medical wing smelled of antiseptic and old coffee. Ethan sat stiffly in a chair too small for his frame, his knuckles whitening around the envelope they'd handed him. The numbers on the check inside could have bought 5 farms, could have erased the scars of that night. But the weight of General Hargrove's stare made the money feel like ashes in his hands. "You don't want it," Hargrove stated, not asked. Ethan pushed the check across the table. "What I want can't be printed on paper." Outside the window, D.C. sprawled in all its polished arrogance, a world away from muddy fields and honest work. Daniel, now dressed in crisp service khakis despite the bandages, leaned forward. "Then name it." The words came before Ethan could stop them. "Those Blackthorn bastards didn't just come for you. They came because they figured a nobody farmer wouldn't matter." He met Hargrove's flinty gaze. "I want to matter." A slow smile spread across the old general's face. He slid a folder across the table. "Blueprints, land surveys. 40 acres adjacent to Joint Base Lewis McChord, zoned for agricultural use with a VA loophole." He tapped the papers. "Build your shelter there. We'll staff it with vets who need purpose. You'll have military protection without the red tape." Daniel's grin was brighter than his medals. "Told you he'd say yes, sir." 6 months later, Ethan stood on the porch of the newly christened Carter's Rest, watching 23 veterans, some missing limbs, all missing pieces of their souls, tend to the first harvest. The soil here was different than back home, richer, darker, like it remembered blood. A black SUV rolled up the gravel drive, and Ethan didn't need to see the plates to know who'd come visiting. General Hargrove emerged with a casserole dish of all things. Marine wife down the street insisted I bring this. He thrust it at Ethan like a live grenade. Place looks decent for a hippie commune. Ethan snorted, lifting the foil to reveal lumpy mashed potatoes. They let you keep stars after that burn. Inside, the mess hall buzzed with laughter and the clatter of silverware. A double amputee named Ruiz was arm wrestling a PTSD counselor. Someone had drawn dicks on the no smoking signs. Home. Daniel arrived last, his dress blues swapped for work jeans, a duffel slung over his shoulder. Reporting for duty, sir. He tossed Ethan a set of keys. These go to the new tiller. Also, POTUS says hi. Hargrove groaned. Christ, don't start. As the sun dipped below the barracks roof, Ethan found himself at the memorial garden, a simple stone engraved with the names of every vet they'd lost to suicide that year. He pressed a hand to the cool surface. Somewhere behind him, Ruiz started a terrible rendition of Sweet Caroline. Somewhere beyond the fence, the world kept turning. But here, in this dirt, with these broken, beautiful people, Ethan Carter finally understood what his wife had always said. Roots grow deepest after the fire. The general appeared at his shoulder, uncharacteristically quiet. After a moment, he cleared his throat. We're expanding the program. 3 more states by Christmas. Ethan nodded at the stone. Make it 5. Hargrove clapped him on the back, his eyes suspiciously bright. Ah, boy. Inside, someone smashed a plate. Someone else cheered. And beneath the cacophony, beneath the grief and the grace, something miraculous took root: hope. The rain had finally stopped when Ethan Carter knelt in the freshly turned earth, pressing seeds into soil that still carried the scent of burnt cedar from his old farm. Around him, the veterans of Carter's Rest moved with quiet purpose, some planting, some simply standing in the sunlight as if remembering what it felt like to be unbroken. In 6 months, this field would bloom with lavender, its purple rose stretching toward the barracks where men and women who'd once given up on living now traded war stories over morning coffee. General Hargrove had called it a rehabilitation program. The press called it a miracle. But Ethan knew the truth. It was just a farm. The same dirt, the same sweat, the same stubborn refusal to let life's storms have the last word. Daniel Reyes visited every Sunday, trading his dress uniform for mud-caked boots, his rank forgotten in the simple act of repairing a fence or teaching a Marine how to prune tomato vines. Sometimes, when the evening light turned golden, Ethan would catch him staring at the memorial garden, his fingers brushing the names etched in stone. No salutes, no speeches, just a man remembering where he'd been. And on Thanksgiving morning, when 3 Black Hawk helicopters descended on the fields, disgorging 24 homeless vets from the city shelters, Ethan didn't flinch at the rotor wash. He just handed General Hargrove a shovel and pointed to the empty field beyond the compost heap. "Potatoes go there," he shouted over the thunder of engines. The old general rolled up his sleeves and got to work. Because sometimes the bravest battles aren't fought with rifles or stealth jets, but with seeds and second chances and the unshakable belief that no one, no matter how lost, is beyond saving. If this story planted something in you, share it. Kindness grows where it's watered.